Mia, a shy waitress in a quaint old diner, struggled to remain invisible, gliding between tables, her eyes downcast, her voice soft yet distant. She had worked there for 4 years, knew every creaky floorboard, every regular, but above all, she had perfected the art of hiding. A long strand of brown hair always covered the left side of her face, concealing a scar she never let show. That morning, a different man entered, sitting at table 7 by the window where sunlight filtered through dusty blinds. He wore a stylish yet understated navy coat, and a worn sketchbook rested near his cup of black coffee. He was not like the usual customers. His face seemed familiar, like someone you'd see in magazines or art catalogs, but Mia had no time for art, barely time for herself. When she approached to take his order, she stammered, "I'm sorry, I'll ask someone else to serve you," her voice barely audible. "Wait," he said calmly, looking up at her. His gaze was intense, almost incredulous. "Those eyes, I painted them years ago." Mia froze. The diner's clamor, clattering dishes, murmurs, the sizzling of the open kitchen, faded away. She blinked, uncertain, her fingers gripping her notebook, knuckles white. She murmured, "I think you're mistaken, sir," before quickly retreating to the kitchen, her heart racing. She knew her strand was out of place, but she hadn't taken the time to fix it, too panicked by what he had said. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter, trying to catch her breath. Sarah, the cook, raised an eyebrow at her. "You okay, sweetheart? You look like you've seen a ghost." Mia shook her head. "No, I just need a second." Sarah shrugged and returned to her pancakes, but Mia closed her eyes, haunted by the man's words. "Those eyes, I painted them." It couldn't be true, and yet, something within her, a distant echo, stirred like a buried memory. At table 7, Ethan sat still, his fingers absent-mindedly caressing the edge of his sketchbook. He had stumbled into this diner by chance, crossing a quiet part of the city, drawn in by the flickering neon sign. Perhaps it was nostalgia, perhaps fate. He hadn't planned to talk. He just wanted to sip his coffee in peace, maybe sketch the trees outside. But upon seeing her, he was struck. It wasn't exactly her, but the eyes that had haunted him for years. He had painted them once, not from a model, but from a dream or a moment of solitude, years ago, when he sought to capture something real on canvas. That painting had remained unfinished, abandoned on an easel in his studio, covered in dust, until today. Now, she was there, real, fragile, wounded, hiding behind a curtain of hair like behind a last bastion. Ethan was not one to be easily shaken, but he knew this was no coincidence. Mia did not return to his table. Tom, another server, brought the bill, casting an awkward glance toward the kitchen. Ethan didn't touch it. He opened his sketchbook, turned to a blank page, and his pencil began to move. A curve of hair, a sketched gaze, and at the center, those eyes. This time, he would finish the painting. He wouldn't let her fade away. Later, in his studio, Ethan stood at the center, surrounded by an oppressive silence. Light filtered through tall windows, falling on canvases covered with sheets, half-finished works. The smell of oil, varnish, and cedar floated in the air, a ghost of the life he had gradually abandoned. It had been 3 years since he had painted with heart, 3 years since he had seen anything worthy of being captured on canvas. He slowly approached a wall at the back, where a large painting lay beneath a sheet. With a steady hand, he pulled it away, revealing a face that had followed him in his dreams until today. Ethan's workshop, once vibrant with assistants, critics, and collectors, had become a museum frozen in time. A light knock on the door broke the silence. "Ethan," said Julian, his longtime assistant and close friend, almost like a brother. "You're here early." Ethan did not turn around. "Do you remember this piece?" Julian approached, observing the painting, eyebrows raised. The ghost girl. How could I forget? You were obsessed with those eyes for months, and then nothing. You gave up halfway through. I didn't give up, Ethan corrected, his eyes fixed on the canvas. I couldn't continue. I thought she wasn't real, that I had invented her. Julian crossed his arms. And now? I saw her yesterday in a diner near Willow Street. She served me coffee, avoided me like the plague, but it's her, Julian. I would bet my hand on it. Those eyes. His voice thickened. It wasn't just a vision, they are hers. Julian remained silent for a moment, then asked, And now? Are you going to try to paint her again after all this time? Ethan sat on a stool. I haven't painted anything real in 3 years. My last 10 exhibitions were recycled, minor revisions. They sold because my name carries weight, but I felt nothing. Julian nodded, aware of Ethan's decline, the lost spark he had never dared to mention. Until yesterday, Ethan continued. When she approached my table, trembling, hiding behind her hair, I felt the need to capture something real again. Not for a gallery, not for buyers, for me. He stood up and looked out the window, towards the city's skyline. I don't know her name, nor her story, but I know everything is in those eyes. If I never paint anything again, I want to finish this. Julian watched him closely. What's your plan? Go back there and stare at her until she runs away. Ethan smiled faintly. Not quite, but I will go back. Not for the coffee, nor for nostalgia. For her. The next day, Ethan pushed open the diner door just after the lunch rush. The place was quieter, with only a few customers seated in front of half-empty plates and lukewarm coffee cups. The familiar smell of grilled bacon and coffee wafted through the air. He chose the same table by the window, where the afternoon light filtered gently. This time, he hadn't brought his notebook, just himself. Behind the counter, Mia hesitated upon seeing him. She had irrationally hoped he wouldn't come back. Her chest tightened, but her feet moved despite herself. It was her section, and she had long learned to swallow her fear like a second cup of coffee. She approached cautiously, notebook in hand, her hair neatly tucked to the left side, as always. Hello, Ethan said, his voice calm and kind. Mia nodded without meeting his gaze. Can I get you something? The same as last time? Black coffee. He paused. Unless you recommend something else. She almost smiled but held back. The blueberry pie is good today. Then I trust you, he replied. One pie it is. Everything seemed to stop in the diner. Mia instinctively brought her hand to her face, but it was too late. She knew she had been seen. A whisper rose from a table behind them, someone whispering too loudly. Her breath caught, and she was about to flee, but Ethan stood up, his movements slow and measured. He positioned himself next to her, without invading her space, just present. He reached out his hand, not to touch the scar, but to gently pick up a strand of hair that had fallen on her cheek. You don't need to hide, he said, his voice warm and firm. This beauty is not something everyone has. It's one that is earned. Mia's eyes widened, a mix of shock and disbelief crossing her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The murmurs in the diner ceased. People were watching, but without insistence. Some averted their eyes out of respect, others observed in silence, as if fearing to break this moment. Ethan stepped back, giving her space. I'm sorry if I was too direct, he added softly, but I meant it. Mia stood frozen for a moment, then nodded slightly, her fingers brushing her cheek again, as if to confirm that the scar was still there, but lighter. She turned and walked toward the kitchen, her heart racing, her breath short, but for the first time, she felt neither shame nor the urge to flee. The next morning, the diner was quieter, a mist blurring the view through the window. Mia moved between the tables, her hair still swept to the left side. She hadn't thought she would see him again after the day before, but a part of her was waiting, listening for the bell at the door. At exactly 10:17, the bell rang. Ethan entered, determined, carrying a package wrapped in brown paper under his arm. He sat at the same table, without looking around. Ethan slowly unwrapped the brown paper, revealing a large sketchbook, its edges slightly worn, the paper thick and textured. He opened it and turned it towards Mia. There, in delicate pencil strokes, was a face, her face, or rather its beginnings, the soft contours of her hair, the curve of her lips, but most importantly, those eyes, sad, searching, the same ones she saw every morning in the mirror. It was her, drawn years before he met her. Mia stepped back, breathless. "What is this?" she murmured. Ethan placed the sketchbook on the table between them. "I started it years ago. I didn't know who she was, just that I couldn't forget her. I could never finish it. Something was missing until I met you." Mia stared at the image, her chest tightening. Her instinct screamed at her to flee, to deny, but those eyes were hers, undeniably, carrying the same pain, the same hesitation, the same cautious hope. She looked up at him, her voice barely audible. "Why would you draw me? You didn't even know me." "I didn't know you," he admitted, "but I felt you in a way. And now I know it's not just a face, it's a story yours." She locked herself in the restroom, her reflection in the mirror staring back at her, eyes wide, breathing fast. Why her? Why now? What fate had led this man to see her before, even knowing her? She leaned against the sink, trying to calm down, but her heart refused to slow. Meanwhile, Ethan waited. He didn't follow her, didn't try to find her. He took a small envelope from his pocket, containing a handwritten note, which he placed next to the sketchbook. He carefully closed it and stood up to leave. The rain had intensified as he stepped outside. He paused for a moment, casting one last glance at the window where he had sat, then disappeared into the gray morning. A few minutes later, Mia returned. The table was empty, but the sketchbook was there, with a note beside it. Mia clutched the note, her trembling fingers. "If you've ever felt alone, come find me. My gallery is at 14th and Brooks. I believe we can finish this together, not just the painting." She stared at the words for a long time, her fingers brushing the sketch once more. It wasn't just art, it was recognition, and perhaps an invitation to something more. That Thursday afternoon, the gallery was quiet, a tranquility only broken by the creaking of the front door. Ethan was finishing hanging a new piece when he turned around, surprised by a visit so late. It was her. Mia stood at the entrance, soaked from the rain, her coat clinging to her figure, her hair partially up but still falling in front of her face like a veil. Her eyes, those unforgettable eyes, briefly met his before looking away. He approached slowly, offering her a clean towel. "Thank you," she murmured, taking it with trembling hands. He didn't ask why she had come. He didn't need to. He stepped aside and gestured for her to sit in a corner of the gallery. She followed, each step hesitant, as if the ground might give way beneath her. They sat facing each other in a gentle silence, the gallery lights humming softly, the rain tapping rhythmically against the windows. After a long moment, Mia finally spoke. "I wasn't going to come. I gave myself 100 reasons not to, but your note, it wouldn't let me be." Ethan nodded. "I'm glad you're here." She fixed her gaze on her hands. "I thought if I ignored it, this pain would go away, but it didn't. You saw something in me that I've been trying to bury for years, and you put on paper." He remained still, letting her speak at her own pace, not pressing her. "I was a dancer," she finally said. "Ballet since I was 5. It was everything to me. I dreamed of stages, lights, movement. It was the only time I felt seen." Mia continued, her throat tight. "One night, when I was 15, our house caught fire. An electrical problem, they said. My parents tried to get me out, but I had lost consciousness in my room. A neighbor pulled me out unconscious. She lightly raised her hand to her face, tracing the path of the scar in the air.
It happened then.
My father. He couldn't look at me the same way after. My mother pretended nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Ethan tightened his hands slightly on his knees. She softened her voice. I stopped dancing. At school, the kids stared at me, whispered. They said it wasn't that bad, that it would fade, but neither the scar nor the looks ever disappeared. Her voice became a whisper. I started to hide, behind my hair, behind silence. I moved as soon as I could, took that job at the diner because they didn't ask questions. She looked up at Ethan, a mix of sadness, resignation, and hope in her gaze. And then you came into my section, and suddenly, I was no longer invisible. Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze unwavering. I don't see your scar when I look at you. I see the fire you went through.
Mia blinked, träning.
You don't pull back when you see it. That's rare. It's not something to pull back from, he said softly. It's a story, yours, and it deserves to be seen. A silence settled, softer, almost familiar. Then Ethan grabbed the unfinished canvas he had kept hidden for years. I want to finish this with you, if you're okay with it. Mia hesitated, then approached the easel. She looked at his face drawn with reverence and vulnerability, a finger tracing the eyes. A tear fell before she could stop it. Okay, she murmured. Ethan looked up. Will you pose for me? She nodded. Yes, but on one condition. Don't hide the scar. He stood up and positioned himself next to her. I had no intention of doing that. Ethan's workshop transformed. What was once a place of solitude became a space of connection. Mia arrived every morning at exactly 10 a.m., her steps initially hesitant, her voice soft. Ethan greeted her with a nod, always calm, never rushing her. She would sit on a stool in the center, surrounded by canvases, natural light flooding the room. At first, she was tense, her gaze wary, but Ethan never asked her to pose in a certain way. He let her be, breathe, and over time, she relaxed. He never spoke of the scar, never asked how she felt, but what struck Mia was that he never looked away either. His eyes met hers with unwavering respect, and when they drifted to the scar, there was no flinching, just acceptance. He painted with reverence, capturing the light on her skin, the slight twitch of her lip when she thought, the softness in her eyes when she forgot she was being watched. Yet, every evening, Ethan stared at the canvas, feeling that something was missing, a soul, a truth. One morning, he welcomed her without brushes. Come with me, he said. She followed him behind the workshop, where a small wild garden thrived. He knelt by a patch of purple daisies, picked one, and approached her. Her breath caught as he tucked the flower into her hair, just above the scar. This flower, he murmured, grows where the soil is poorest, where everything gives up. It blooms anyway. It is not beautiful despite that, but because of it. He added, it reminds me of you. Mia felt her heart race, her throat tight. A few days later, Mia saw the nearly finished portrait. She remained silent for a long time, her trembling fingers brushing against the canvas. It was her, not the version she hid, but her truth, her scar, her eyes, her soul. It's, she began, the words stuck. It's me, she finally whispered. At the exhibition, the gallery shone with warm lights, guests admiring Ethan's new works, but Mia's portrait, at the center, drew all the attention. Her eyes stared straight ahead, her gentle smile, her visible scar, the purple flower nestled in her hair. A little girl with a burned scar approached Mia, hugged her tightly, and whispered, I have a scar too, but you made me feel beautiful. This moment changed everything for Mia. She and Ethan launched Canvas of Courage, a project for burn survivors and those with visible differences, helping them express their stories through art. Mia no longer hid. 2 weeks later, she left the diner, her hair up, her scar exposed to the sun. On her way to the gallery, a little boy looked at her and smiled. She returned a bright smile, her heart light, finally whole. As Ethan had said, "You were never unfinished. You were just waiting to be seen."